Not so long ago on Outside Xtra, we made a video about boss battles that became much more terrifying in the remake version of the game. And then we finished making that video, published it, and finally relaxed, thinking the days of staring at horrifyingly upscaled, remastered, and fully HD boss fights were behind us at last. Except they weren't, because you lot, the commenters, chimed in with many more examples of major enemies that were once bearable and now are nothing but nightmare fuel. Here then are your picks of bosses way scarier in the remake, beware spoilers for all versions of the following games.
The source of everything.
Say what you like about Final Fantasy VII villain Sephiroth, but my word is he beautiful, and that's before he turns into a literal six-pack angel. The same cannot be said, however, about the alien being whose cells were used to create Sephiroth. That being is Jenova, who looks a bit like a deer's antler that's been put through the wash with a tie-dye t-shirt, albeit an antler that shoots lasers. Fighting against the boss forms of Jenova will certainly push the abilities of a Final Fantasy VII player, but probably not terrify them, what with Jenova looking like a bunch of half-melted popsicles. Commenter Death by Konami knows that's hardly true in the game's more recent remake, however, saying, "I have to point out the grotesque makeover that the Jenova Dreamweaver got in the Final Fantasy VII remake. Yes, Jenova got a disgusting new look 23 years after the original game, an appropriate span of time seeing as this horrible reimagining is not suitable for anyone under the age of 23. Ugh, better make it 25. This new Jenova, dubbed Dreamweaver, is 80% slimier than the original, 90% more studded with beetle-like carapace, and 100% more likely to sprout wave after wave of wriggling toxic tentacles. Looking at Jenova Dreamweaver's tiny creepy skull face and gross flopping appendages for any length of time is a recipe for lost sleep. And yet you'll have to look at the Dreamweaver for bloody ages, paying extremely close attention in fact, because this 3-stage boss fight requires constant focus if you don't want to fall foul of Jenova's acid rain, teleportation, or health bar ruining attacks. It's a drawn-out battle, and that's before you factor in the way the game slows down time whenever you're cycling through menus, so you can appreciate every single moment of being wrapped in Jenova's poisonous tentacles. With enough sword violence, Jenova is eventually banished back to its puny clone form, but its horribleness will stay with you forever. Seriously, Final Fantasy VII Remake, was this particularly nasty new Jenova really necessary? Sephiroth better show up right now or I'm uninstalling this game. You got lucky, game. One thing we can all agree about The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is that it doesn't need to be any creepier. Yes, this is creepy enough. Where exactly did Nintendo get off then, making one of the game's few non-horrifying boss enemies a lot creepier in the remake, namely a big fish boss enemy called Gyorg, as commenter Skylar Jekyll recalls. And here I was expecting Gyorg from the Majora's Mask remake. In the first version of Majora's Mask, Gyorg looked like a piece of beef jerky, if beef jerky had eyes and could make the face beef jerky would make if it knew you were about to eat it. Gyorg is tricky to fight on account of being, like most fish, primarily underwater, and it has a penchant for releasing clouds of smaller fish from its mouth that will try to eat you, which is unlike most fish. Weird, but apparently not weird enough for Nintendo, as when they had the opportunity to crank up the creepy for the 3DS release of Majora's Mask, they really ran with it, or should we say, put a bone mask on it. Gyorg's new faceware isn't what makes this remake boss so awful, however. That would be the fact that now, to win, you have to fill Gyorg with arrows until it, and I'm just going to read this how it's written in the script, vomits up its own eyeball. This huge bonus eye is Gyorg's new weak spot, Nintendo clearly having lost a lot of sleep over releasing the original Majora's Mask with what it considered to be an insufficient number of scenes in which a fish upchucks an eyeball the size of a hot air balloon. What a relief to have fixed that. Half-Life is a series famous for its creature design, forcing you into combat and sometimes into alliances with enemies so ghoulish and icky you wonder how developer Valve ever came up with this stuff.
But we will again excel in all tests.
Then you fight the Gonarch in Half-Life 1 and realise that, to quote Gabe Newell, this time they just put a giant testicle on a 20-foot tall armoured spider. Don't want to jinx it, but I think I may have identified this enemy's weak spot. The Gonarch is fought, or perhaps a better word would be hunted, by Gordon Freeman towards the very end of the game. This monolithic beast attacks with its 4 huge claws, spits acid from somewhere on top of itself, and dispenses teeny tiny head crabs from that pendulous swaying sack. Deal enough damage in each encounter, however, and the Gonarch flees, with Gordon in hot pursuit, of course. The chase concludes in what we can only assume is the Gonarch's lair, where Gordon has ample opportunity to fill that conspicuous sack with all the exotic ammunition at his disposal, which makes the Gonarch explode, and that is that. But commenter Devon Moorhead knows there's a version of the Gonarch out there that is much more, well, just much more. I'd have to say the Gonarch from Half-Life in the Black Mesa remake. Black Mesa, should you not be familiar, is the hugely ambitious, fan-built, Valve-approved remake of Half-Life 1, which reimagines and rebuilds entire swathes of Half-Life, but in particular the bit set in the Zen dimension, which is where you meet the Gonarch, who now makes a much more, shall we say, dramatic entrance. Oh crap. While the graphical overhaul alone would be enough to earn the suddenly horrifying Gonarch a spot on this list, there are so many more reasons to be fearful. The revamped attack patterns, for instance, which includes very many more of those flesh-eating baby head crabs. Or the way Gonarch 2.0 has staggering speed and aggression, making it much more likely you'll be smashed clear across the map, or even clear off the map. Or how what was a 10-minute leisurely pursuit to the Gonarch's lair is now a desperate multi-stage scrabble through a network of caves and open arenas that will take you the best part of an hour, and this time you are very much the thing being hunted. If your body isn't too saturated with adrenaline to work a keyboard anymore, this hellish boss battle ends in a supersized version of the lair from the original game, with both you and the Gonarch fighting like hell and a new orchestral score going absolutely bonkers. Then, well, it bursts. Because of course it does. Right, I'm going for a lie down.
Me. I am the Great Mighty Poo, and I'm going to throw my at you.
Making a boss fight way scarier in the remake doesn't have to be about a complete redesign or terrifying new attacks. Sometimes it can simply be taking something already horrendous and making it just a little bit worse, as commenter EatAnime knows too well. I am the Great Mighty Poo, and my new form is grosser to you The self-styled Great Mighty Poo is a singing boss in Conker's Bad Fur Day, whose only saving grace is that, due to the technical limits of the Nintendo 64 on which this game was initially released, it doesn't actually look like anything except a stack of brown polygons.
Do you really think you'll survive in here? You don't seem to know which creek you're in.
The same cannot be said of the visually improved Xbox version, however, which developer Rare must have been halfway through making when they realised, oh no, we forgot about the boss made entirely of guess we have to make that with next-gen graphics now. It's little touches that make the remade version of TGMP, as he's known to his friends, so much worse. For instance, the way his waving arms are now literally dripping with feces.
I am the Great Mighty Poo, and I am going to throw my at you.
Or the way it's now raining crap in the boss arena, complete with immersive splashes on the camera whenever you get hit with one of the boss's gobs of waste. It all makes for an even less enjoyable experience than the first time around, and you'll practically want to hold your nose as you balance stuffing the Mighty Poo's gob full of toilet roll with seeking out life-giving chocolate chunks to keep your health up. Yeah, don't know about you, Conker, but I've never been less hungry for chocolate. You'd think the only dread you'd experience playing a Kirby game would be the existential kind if you accidentally think for too long about what's inside a Kirby. Do the things that go inside a Kirby die, or are they merely trapped? And if the latter, for how long? How exactly does time function inside a Kirby? Oops, there's the dread. But you'd think you could at least relax in the presence of Kirby's cute friends, like the adorable Marx, a jester who looks to be made of bubblegum, who, in the Milky Way Wishes subgame of Kirby Superstar, entreats Kirby to gather enough star power to stop the sun and moon fighting. Aww. Until, that is, Marx interrupts Kirby once that star power is gathered and makes his own selfish wish to rule the world, at which point he is regrettably transformed into something with not inconsiderable power to terrify, bearing in mind this is supposed to be a game suitable for all ages. Marx didn't need to be any more terrifying, but uh-oh, here's commenter New Age Bound Hippie with a casual mention of Superstar's Nintendo DS remake, Kirby Superstar Ultra. Going to Superstar Ultra. Marx Soul, man. Those ominous ellipses won't really prepare you for Marx's tweaked appearance for the remake, now doubly hard to fight with even creepier staring eyes, even more moves involving splitting himself in half, and a lot more demonic laughter. Worse than any of that is Marx Soul's death animation, which, we remind you, a game suitable for all ages. Since then, Nintendo has been on a crusade to keep the nightmare of Marx Soul alive, commemorating this horrible boss in Kirby Triple Deluxe with a gross-out keychain collectible, and even bringing Marx back in Smash Bros. Ultimate, now with even more disturbing moves, like raining black orbs from his eyes. And, I mean, I don't even know how to describe this one. I swear to God, Nintendo, what is it with you and eyes today?
Jesus Christ!
The Resident Evil series is full of terrifying monsters, most of whom look like they just swallowed a big bag of footballs and eyes right before they showed up to say hello. Arguably the scariest monster in the entire Resident Evil series, however, doesn't need any of that tentacly weirdness to intimidate your luckless character. All he needs is a trench coat, a slow methodical walk, and, to be fair, being 8 feet tall. That does help. But if you thought the Tyrant was terrifying in the original Resident Evil 2, you hadn't seen anything yet, nor had commenter Lady Aborson, who said, I'm surprised I didn't see Mr. X from the Resi 2 remake. I still catch myself listening for footsteps before I go through doors. Unlike his appearance in the original game, the Resident Evil remake's Mr. X introduces himself by effortlessly lifting a helicopter with one hand, the same hand he is extremely keen to start punching you with ASAP.
Jesus, stay back!
He's also been given an overhaul in terms of his abilities, and now this upgraded Mr. X can move faster, go to more places in the police station, and even open doors to get at you in rooms in which you might have been safe before. In the original Resident Evil 2, Mr. X only appeared in the B scenario, but now he's in both, meaning that no matter which side of the story you're playing through or which character you're controlling, Mr. X is going to be following you around, and believe us, he's as bad at letting things go as Elon Musk on Twitter. As Lady Aborson mentioned in their comment, it's also possible to hear Mr. X's footsteps as he makes his way around the police station. So whatever you're doing, there's always a chance you'll get an audio reminder of how nowhere is really safe from his big old punching fists. And while his appearance is also more chilling in the remake thanks to the updated graphics, the most horrifying aspect of his new appearance is that he's been given a little leather trilby hat, and it's surely only a short hop from there to owning a collection of samurai swords and calling women females on Reddit. Chilling.
This is not your grave, but you are welcome in it.
If you played Halo, you might recall the bit where it goes all Blair Witch as Master Chief literally finds footage of a fire team falling prey to the sinister and ancient Flood alien species. If you ever wanted to know who's in charge of the Flood, perhaps to register a complaint with management about having your organs torn out by them, want to know more.
What is that?
I am a monument to all your sins.
The Flood is overseen by a near-omniscient being, the Gravemind, a gross hive mind that becomes 1,000,000% grosser in the Halo 2 remake, as Mr. Dinmaker recalls. Not sure if it counts as a boss, but the Gravemind in Halo 2 got a definite what the makeover during the remaster. Mr. Dinmaker is quite right that you never actually get to fight the Gravemind, but seeing as so many of you suggested it, and seeing as this reimagining of the Flood hive mind is so tremendously extra in its foulness, we felt it would be a shame not to mention it. Also, if we had to look at this footage, so should you.
What is that?
Gravemind, which ensnares Master Chief in the 2004 original game to order him to stop the Halo weapon's activation, has an organic look so reminiscent of the plant from Little Shop of Horrors, you'll spend half this cutscene expecting it to burst into a rendition of Feed Me.
Fate had us meet as foes, but this ring will make us brothers.
So imagine playing Halo 2 Anniversary a decade later and seeing that same cutscene from years gone by, except now the Gravemind is this.
I am a monument to all your sins.
Mate, you are a monument to video game graphics being a bad idea. Now the Gravemind is soaked in blood, seems to be composed entirely of rotten flesh, and has, I don't know how many mouths? We can see at least 3, and frankly we have to assume there are more.
Now I shall talk, and you shall listen.
The attention to detail lavished on the leader of the Flood is worrying, with every line and spluttering mannerism made exponentially more horrible this time around.
This one's containment. And this one's great journey are the same.
Whatever you say, Gravemind, you're so big and wise. So those were your picks of bosses that got way scarier, creepier, generally more unpleasant in the remake of the game. Can you think of any more? If so, let us know in the comments, and who knows, maybe we can make this video a third time. So excited to look at even more horrifying remake bosses, oh no. If you enjoyed this, then why not like and subscribe, and if you did enjoy this, there's every chance you'll enjoy the other videos that we make on this channel. For example, we have a tabletop series we recently started where we play Blades in the Dark, which is an awesome crime sim. It's really fun, and I reckon you would enjoy it, so do check it out. Alright, that's all for now, thank you, goodbye.